Now, the first thing they ask you, let's go back to the question. So you haven't even answered the question fully yet. You've just kind of laid the foundation so they know you know about workshops, how you'll approach it. This is answering the part that says present your approach to organizing the workshop. That's all we just talked about. We talked about why you use the workshop. We talked about, how you'd structure it, having your vision, what you would avoid, how you'd set it up, what tools you'd use, things like that. Now we're going to jump into defining the problem statement. So let's get into that. So this is the second step. So when we talk about defining the problem, first we have to have a vision statement for the outcome of the project, right? So what are we trying to accomplish with this workshop? What is the value to be derived from it, right? And then there may be that they're already doing something, unless it's a completely new feature or product or service or process, then they're doing something in lieu of having whatever the better thing is you're going to come up with. So they're doing something today. So what is that thing they're doing? And so that's a part of the problem definition, is to understand what are they doing right now. And then you ask the workshop participants to define where they have problems. So for you to get to the problem, you would first clarify what they're doing, and then you'd ask the participants to identify the places where there is a breakdown, where they're feeling pain, where it's frustrating, where there is a problem, right? Then once you do that, then you start to identify who. So, identify the target user. Who's the person having this problem? And what are they trying to do? What's the process they're doing right now? Define the problem from the user's perspective. Okay, I get up, I have to click on, I go to this website, I have to make this purchase, but when I click on this button, it takes me to this screen, and I already had it in my cart, but the cart seems to empty out, and now I have to do it all over again, and whatever, right? So define the problem from the user's perspective, not from the back-end system company's perspective, and then understand when and where the problem occurs. So in a group setting, what's great is that different people could have different perspective of the problem. So from this user's perspective, when they're trying to, let's say, create the invoice, they have these set of problems. But on the manager side, when they're trying to actually approve the invoice, they have these other set of problems, right? So you get that two angle approach or 360-degree view into the problem from different perspectives, and you'd start writing that out or defining that from that perspective, not from the system necessarily or from internally, but from the end user, the person who's consuming or getting the most benefit out of whatever it is that you're studying. All right. So some of the ways that you can get to the problem is by 5 whys. So asking why 5 times. For example, why are healthy accounts churning? Because they were in fact unhealthy. Churn, by the way, means that you didn't renew. Let's say you have a subscription service that you pay a subscription for 3 years, for example. At the end of the 3rd year, you didn't renew for another 3 years. You decided to cancel, and you didn't renew. So that's called churn. That's when they lose a customer. So the question is, why are healthy accounts churning? It's because they were not healthy. They were unhealthy, right? But it looked like they were healthy. And then, so you keep asking for why 5 times. So now it's going to be, why didn't we know they were unhealthy? Because there wasn't enough engagement. So you didn't engage with the account enough to know that it was actually unhealthy, even though it looked like it would have been healthy. Why wasn't there enough engagement would be the next logical question. Because the CSM, or customer support manager, has many accounts, and it's not easy to tell which ones need more attention. So imagine you're managing a portfolio of 100 accounts. How do you really know who to pay attention to make sure that they're healthy, especially if the system looks like they're healthy, but you just have a kind of a guess. You can't really tell that they're actually unhappy with their service, right? Next question would be, why isn't it easy to tell which accounts need more attention? And the answer would be because there is no indication to track accounts that may churn. And then the question would be, why isn't there indication to track accounts that may churn? And then it says, there was never any data used to show trends towards churn. And therein lies your answer, also your problem. So the root of the problem is not that healthy accounts are churning. The root of the problem is that there is not enough data to show trends towards churning. Because if you could see the data that said, oh, this is red, this account is going to churn, like they're unhappy, they don't have enough people logging in, they gave us a low NPS score, We can never get in contact with our primary contact. That person doesn't answer our phone calls or our emails. Like, those are all indicators that this is not a healthy account. But if you don't have that data and you're managing 100 accounts, you wouldn't know to pay attention over here as opposed to over there, because everything would be on the same playing field, but it's not really. So if you have that data to help show you that trend, then you can start focusing on where you need to focus on, and so that you can help these accounts from churning, right? So anyway, the point of this is that one of the methods to get to the root cause of the problem is the 5 whys, which means asking why 5 times tends to lead to the root cause. And if you solve that root cause, you could solve the problem. So here are some examples of problem statements. It's almost like a user story statement, to be honest. So you could say, a user needs whatever the need is in order to accomplish whatever the goal is. So as a CSM, I need to be able to detect when an account is unhealthy so that I can work towards preventing churn. That is a problem statement as well. It sounds like a user story statement, and it could turn out to be one, but it tends to be, we like to formulate problem statements like that as well, to show you who is it that needs to do this thing, what they need to do, and what's the goal they'll accomplish if they do it. Or you could always use how might we statements, which is how might we make it easier for our CSMs to detect trends when an account is likely to churn. Now, how might we problem statement is useful in workshops where you're trying to come up with a solution, where you're trying to ideate around what could be a solution for this. So we have this problem, how might we, and then we're going to talk about the solution. But if you're having a workshop where it's just trying to just uncover the problem, maybe let's say you have a 1-hour workshop, you don't have enough time to delve into all the possibilities for solution, you just want to make sure you capture very clearly what the problem is, then you probably wouldn't use a how might we statement, right? You'd probably go on the workshop and try to make sure you understand very clearly what the problem is. And that would be like as a user, I want blah, 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 right? Or you could even make problem statements that are just sentences. User is unable to detect when there is a unhealthy account and this is causing churn, right? Or something like that. So it doesn't have to be as formal as this. Don't take this as being, in stone and that it's wrong if you write it any other way. Problem statements are very fluid and you can make them up. It just needs to make sure you identify who is having the problem, what problem they're having, and when the problem happens. And if you can put in a goal as to what the end result would be if you solve it, then that would be great too. All right. So what kind of activities can you do in the workshop to uncover these problems? Well, you can do mind mapping. You can talk about that in a minute. You can create the process map together. So you start creating these process flows, diagrams together. Normally, when we were physically in the office, we had a room, in a conference room, that was like a workshop room. We had a big whiteboard, and then we had painted on the wall the whiteboard paint. So we would go up there and draw things, and it was like a really nice working room. We called it a war room, right? It was a war room where we went in there and was like hyper focused, and ideas came out of there, and we were just like, ugh, it was awesome. So you'd go up to the whiteboard and you start drawing the process, and people would say, no, we didn't send the document here. We normally have to go get it approved on here first, and then we'd send it here, and it goes to that place. And so as they're telling you this flow, you're drawing it on the whiteboard, and they get a chance to have a visual of what they're doing every day. And you can't imagine how enlightening that is to some people who didn't realize these were all the steps that were taking to do one thing, right? And they would correct you. You'd undo things that they said we didn't do, and people would start arguing about what they should have been doing and didn't do. And it's wonderful, right? If you do it right, it's wonderful. So you can create that process map together. That's for engaging activity. And you can play some innovation games, right? And I can do a whole video on innovation games. One of them is on Speedboat. I don't want to get too much into that detail, but research innovation games, and those are some of the good things that you can do in a workshop style setting that will help you uncover the problems, right? And then, so the mind map is just where you start off with a central idea, and then it just starts branching out into different ideas. And it just, after a while, it becomes quite extensive and quite involved. For example, here you have one, and it started off with a central idea, then it's branched out, and those branch out into more things, and it can become as complex as this. And this is like not the most complex mind map I've done or seen. Um, so it can get quite involved, but it's fun. It's fun to see all the branches get formed and the different things in each branch, and it's a great activity to do with a group of people. And sometimes it can get really big and you can't really keep up with it, so you might just state the ideas and then go create the mind map afterwards. But if as much as you can do things together in the same session, that would be great. And we talked again about just going up to the board and drawing these process flows. And so something like this, right, is very typical in a workshop where we have the whiteboard, and normally the BA is up there doing this process, getting all the validation from the team, and we're doing it together. And again, speedboat, I didn't want to talk about it earlier, but since we're here, so you draw a boat on the whiteboard, right? And the features that the audience doesn't like are the anchors, and the boat needs to go as fast as it can, but the anchors are weighing it down. So that way it helps you to identify what are the problems that is happening with this feature, right? So it helps you to identify, what the problems are and why people don't like it, basically. So that's a good exercise to do. Now, what activities can you do to determine the solution? So the innovation game again, prioritization. So there's lots of methodology around prioritization. You can do Moscow, you can do feature, there's a number of things that you could do there. Buy a feature is also good, where you have a set amount of money and you have to put your money where your mouth is. So if you think this is the most important feature, then you spend more money on it, and then your money runs out at some point. So you can see what you've bought, and what you've bought indicates how valuable you think it is, right? So, and again, we talked a little bit about how might we problem statements, where that's really a good way to think through how might we solve this, and you know what the problem is that you're trying to solve. So by this time, you have answered. Let me go back to the main question. So by this time, you've answered your approach to organize the workshop, the problem statement. Now you need to answer the approach to confirm goals and desired outcomes with your business stakeholders across cross-functional areas. How do you do that? So let's go back to that slide. So how do you approach, confirming goals and desired outcomes with your stakeholders across multiple areas of the company, like cross-functional teams? So it's iterative, right? So it's an iterative process to arrive at desired outcomes. You're not going to just go in one time and get all the outcomes and it's like done. Typically it takes multiple sessions, right, to really iron out and confirm the outcomes. You're going to derive high level requirements in the workshop. So it's not intended to be every single detail fleshed out, but the high level, what is it that we really want to accomplish in the solution we came up with? You're going to come up with your detailed requirements based off of that high level requirements afterwards. You're going to discuss with the development team what they thought would be a good solution from a high level. All those ideas that you came out of your workshop, you're going to use those as high level requirements. Again, you could take ideas in the workshop and then decide later on, okay, this is probably not a good idea, right? You can do it on your own. It doesn't mean that everything that you suggested is what we're going to do, but you can get such wealth of understanding from the group, and then you use your analysis skills to figure out which ones make sense and which ones, you probably table. And you discuss that with the development team to see if it's even possible. Is it even in the realm of possibility? Because again, no idea was a bad idea. So when they come up with these things, don't discard it just because you think it's not possible. Figure out some of them if it's even possible. And then you're going to walk through the detailed requirements, goals, and outcomes with the stakeholders to confirm that the solution will solve the problem statement. So here's how it works. You do this workshop, you understand the problem, you get some ideas around the solution, you take that solution, you do some analysis on the solution, think through it a little bit, you talk to your development team, you get feedback from them. They may throw some things out the window right away, like, no, we can't do this. You do some more analysis, you talk back to your team. This is why it's iterative. It's like you got to do rounds of it, right? You talk back to your team. They might become more comfortable with what you came up with. Okay, now you feel like you're at a good place. You go back to your stakeholders in the cross-functional team and you say, here's what we came up with. Here's what's doable. Here's of all the things that you told me in the workshop. Here's what we're about to do. Does it still solve the problem? They might say yes. They might say no. You might have to go back to the drawing board. You do that. You go back to the development team. They give you feedback again. The process repeats. And then when you get to your stakeholders, they don't have to sign off on the detailed requirements because at this stage, you're only talking about high level. They don't need to know exactly what the API call is. They don't need to know exactly what field type goes where. They don't need all that. They just need to know what the process is going to be, that we have a real-time communication with this third party. And when you put the data over here, in real time, you'll be able to see data over there. That's at that level. Like, it's high level. It's not the details of the call and the different field types and exact data point. None of that. That would be too much for them. They're not technical people. They are business. They're cross-functional business people. So when you get the high-level requirements refined, then you no longer have to engage those stakeholders because they've already given you all that they can give you. They gave you what the high-level solution should be that would solve it for them, and you've already had that discussion. Now you become the SME to your development team, and you work through all the details with the development team. So you don't have to keep going back to your cross-functional team after they give you the high-level sign-off, right? And then you take it through to development. You engage your stakeholders again when you're done developing, and you want them to see your finished product. And so if you did this right, when they see the finished product, nobody would be surprised. Nobody would be disappointed because you had the discussion multiple times at the beginning, right? So whether you're waterfall or agile, it's kind of the same thing. And the more you engage them upfront, the better outcome you will have. And that's how you'd answer that question in the presentation, right? Now, the other question was how to ensure that the new technology will address the goals and outcomes. Well, nothing is necessarily ensured, right? You're going to make your best stab at it. You're going to give it the best approach possible, but there could still be surprises, and you're going to try to mitigate those risks up front because you're going to do your proper analysis. But one of the best ways to ensure or to become very close to making sure that it addresses the goals and the outcomes is by this collaboration we just talked about. Having that feedback loop, talking about it, sharing the high level requirements, getting the sign off, having a discussion with technical team. All that collaboration will help to make sure that when we finally deliver this, that it covers everything and that there's no surprises, that you uncovered all your dependencies and you were able to build what it is that would solve the problem. And then if you set some clear success criteria, that would also be helpful. And if you're clear about the scope of what you're doing, they know that it's an MVP first, and then we'll have future enhancements. They know exactly what they're getting, what they're not getting. Then all that could be in the communication, the collaboration that would help to make sure that you accomplish the goals and outcomes that you set out to accomplish. And then the last question was, what metrics would you use for tracking success? Now, the first metric I think of is anything that would help to measure the satisfaction of the end users for what we built. And one of those things I think are like user adoption rates, right? Let's say this is a feature that's been released to end users, not internal users, and let's say there's a way for you to track if they're using this feature, then has the usage gone up since you released it? How many people are using it? If nobody's using it, then that's a clear indication that it wasn't needed or that they don't like it, right? So how much people are logging in, how many people are clicking on this link, how many people are staying on this page, whatever adoption metrics that we could gather, that would be a great way to track success. Another way could just be feedback from users. It could be even feedback from the UAT testers. So if we talked about these requirements up front, we went off, we built it, we brought in back these same stakeholders to test it at the end when we've built the whole thing, and they give us feedback that says, this does not match what we talked about at the beginning, and this does not solve the problem, then that's a clear sign of failure, right? But if they said, this is great, this is exactly what we've been looking for, this is what we talked about, thank you for realizing it, I'm going to be so excited to use it and tell my customers about it, then that's a good sign of success. It's a way you can track success, and you can have metrics around that as well in terms of how satisfied they are. You can start creating surveys around that, things like that, to help you track that success. Another way of tracking success is the number of bugs, and this is both bugs in the UAT testing and bugs in production. So if in the testing you had a lot of bugs and you decide to go to production with those bugs still, then that's probably an indication that this is not a good successful release. Or if you release this thing to your production environment where your end users are, and you have very little bugs and there is high usage, then that's a good sign that it's successful because they're using it and they're not complaining about it. Sometimes people don't tell you good things, but you can infer that it's successful because they haven't complained. Silence is good sometimes. So those are some of the ways. There could be others, but those are some of the ways I could think of for tracking success. Now, if you have like data point for things you're tracking already, like if you already have metrics around whatever the feature process is already, then just comparing the metrics you had before and the metrics you have after would be a great way to track to see if it's successful. If you see the metrics going up or going down based on what it is, then that could indicate to you some level of success as well. But absent any prior data point, these would be ways that we could use to track success. And with that, guys, you've answered all the questions that they've asked, right? Now, the next thing you'd want to do is you'd want to wrap that up for them. Wrap it up with like a present with a nice bow on top, right? So you have a slide that wraps it all together. So you want to put it all together. You want to say that in this presentation, I was able to, define my workshop approach. I was able to show you how I define a problem statement. I was able to show how I would confirm the goals and desired outcomes with the business stakeholders across, cross-functional areas. I was able to ensure that the new technology will address the goals and outcome and show you how I would go about getting that done. And I also showed you the metrics that I would use to track success. And so with this, I have demonstrated my ability to present a very complex thing to show you how I would actually work through organizing a workshop. And the next step would have been to write documentation. And I assure you that I can also write very good business requirements document or user stories and have that communication, facilitate those meetings to make sure that we all work as a team to build the right solution. So I think with this presentation, I have shown you guys that I would be the best candidate, the best person to select for this role as a business analyst, right? You have to pitch. Don't be too shy to pitch. This is a sales presentation. You're doing a demo of yourself, right? So that's what you do, right? You pitch at the end. You confirm everything they have asked you to answer. You've answered it, and you also confirm that you know how to do the next steps, and you're showing them the skills that you'd apply in their role. And then you open up the floor for questions. If they have any questions, they have anything they want to clarify, then you answer that. And then you just have like a thank you slide. Okay. So that, my friends, is how you would approach the business analyst interview case study in this case, right? And again, you're going to be asked to do a presentation. So get comfortable with it. It's coming. If you want more, I do have a course called Tales from the Business Analyst Job Interview. And in that course, which is available on my Business Analyst Training Hub, which you can get from my website, go to karaleise.com, go to courses and go to premium courses. You can get to that, and I'll also put the link down below. I have a course where I talk about some examples of questions that have been asked in interviews, how people were able to answer them. I have some actual recordings of interviews for real jobs, and you hear how I answer those questions. And so you can get an example, you can get a feel for how to do a business analyst interview. And if you need personalized help, I have a consult called the Business Analyst Interview Success Blueprint. And in that consult, I actually walk you through how to do a business analyst interview, what questions to anticipate, how you should answer those questions. And it's a recorded session. You get the recording. I have a resource kit that I give you that has templates and things in there that will help you to actually be prepared for this role. So all of that is available from my website. Either go to the consultation if you want a one-on-one live session with me, or you can go get the recorded course that's on the Business Analyst Training Hub. So there's resources out there to help you, okay, so that you can take on these presentations and nail it and get that job. You can do it, okay? Hopefully this was helpful, and I will see you guys next time. Thank you.